Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my weekly Node-RED development live stream. Sorry for the guys watching live. I'm a little late starting. Hope you're all well. Hope you've all had a good week. And tell my phone to be quiet. What have you been up to? Anything interesting? It's been business as usual here. Just getting on with lots of different things. If it's your first time watching the stream, this is an hour or so, give or take, of me doing some Node-RED core development work rather than teaching you how to use Node-RED. But hopefully this is interesting. We'll delve into new stuff that's going on, bug fixes, whatever it might be. And tonight, the subject is the Flow Debugger that in last week's session, I gave a bit of a preview of in the last 15 minutes of last week's video. But there's just a few bits and pieces I want to tidy up before before I move on from it. And the plan will be to release it alongside Node-RED 2.0. It requires Node-RED 2.0 because of some of the internal APIs we've had to add to Node-RED to support some of the stuff the Flow Debugger wants to do. So we've got a few bits and pieces to do. And the theme very much is, this is kind of just trying to get it to the minimum viable state so it is useful. I know, Nathaniel, you've played with it a bit this week. That's what we want to do. Get something out that's useful. There's going to be a whole host of extra features it could do, but we don't spend all our time adding every possible feature under the sun. Let's get something released and then we can iterate on it much more quickly. And this is the cool thing, it being a plugin to Node-RED rather than tied into the core, is we can iterate on the Flow Debugger as rapidly as we want and push updates, as long as things don't require core changes where we have to do a bit more coordination. Then it's one of the cool things about using the plugins to introduce new functionality into Node-RED. So where are we at? What are we doing? There is a bit of a to-do list on the issues list for the Flow Debugger. Let me just refresh, make sure that's clean. That's clean. Where are we? Yeah, so the Node-RED Debugger is the repository on GitHub. It's all up there. So if you have the Node-RED dev branch from GitHub, not the current 1.3.4 release, but the latest code from GitHub for the core of Node-RED, and you're comfortable knowing how to build that and run it, then there are instructions here for how to pull down the Flow Debugger to play with. And we've got some issues against the Flow Debugger. So this is me just capturing plans for what we want to do with the Flow Debugger. Some I've marked as V1, basically what we want to do before the first release. Some I've marked as future because they'll be useful features to have, but things we can live without on day one. What we're going to do tonight is just look at a couple of these V1 enhancements to the Flow Debugger, just to help get them done, because in fact they're relatively should be very straightforward to add. So first up are keyboard shortcuts. So at the moment, the Flow Debugger, it's a lot of clicking around to do things. So perhaps I'll just give a little demo of where we're at with the Flow Debugger, because it has moved on a bit since you saw it last. You get this new Flow Debugger sidebar tab. Do need to decide whether this Flask icon is the right icon for it. It's kind of, I just picked one somewhat random from the Font Awesome selection of icons. But anyway, Flow Debugger. So even when it's installed, it doesn't touch the runtime at all. So there is absolutely no impact to the message handling in Node-RED when it's disabled. As soon as you click Enable, it then inserts itself into the messaging path, so it can start monitoring messages and start capturing them. So at this point, there is a slight sort of performance cost to have the debugger enabled, because it has to examine every message flowing through to see should it pause the runtime or not. And then, yeah, so you have breakpoints and messages. Obviously, there's nothing set at the moment, as you can see. What you do is you come and move the mouse over a port where you would like a breakpoint. And when the Flow Debugger is enabled, you can see you get this little lozenge, dotted lozenge. And if you move the mouse over it and click, that adds a breakpoint at that point in the flow. So that means whenever a message arrives at this port, it will pause the runtime. So we can see that in action when I click the inject button. Maybe if I zoom just a little, so you can sort of see the numbers. You can now see there's a little 1 there telling us there's one message queued up at that breakpoint. And if I hit the inject again, you can now see there's a 1 over on this side, because the inject node has sent a message, but because the runtime is currently paused, as you can see in the header, that message messages start queuing up at that port. And as you can see over on the side, it kind of looks like debug, but it's slightly different. This is now showing us the queue of messages as the runtime will process them. So you can jump in and examine, have a look at the message. I did tease last week about being able to edit the messages. That's not going to be in V1. So I found that gets quite involved in how to do that properly, from a user experience, because messages aren't strictly JSON, then we can't just throw them in the JSON editor and hope it works. It needs a bit more thought. So I've taken that away for V1. But as with debug, you still get the copy path and copy value, because we get that function for free because we've already built that into the widget that displays messages. And then, you've got various controls now dotted across the screen. So you have, up in the toolbar, you've got a play button, which will resume the runtime, which basically means it will start then processing the messages, and if anything hits a breakpoint, it will pause again. Or you can click the step button, and that pops the top message off this list and steps it forward. So when I click that on that message, you can see that message disappeared from the input, and it's now appeared on this output. And in the message list, you can see that message is now at the bottom of the list, because it is the queue of messages to be processed. Now, what's quite nice at this point is I can actually say, here I see the 2 messages from the inject node. I can actually step an individual message, sort of leapfrog it ahead in the queue, which might be nice. But I can also hit the trash button, which removes that message entirely from the queue. And in fact, okay, hit a little error there, but that's okay. We can fix that up in a moment. So there we go. And then when you hover over a breakpoint, when you click on it, it becomes deactivated, which means when the runtime is running, messages won't cause a deactivated breakpoint won't cause the debugger to pause the runtime, but it's handy to be able to deactivate it and keep it there if you're trying to debug something and you just want to quieten that breakpoint for a moment whilst you do something, but then bring it back. But then if you click on it twice and you get that dotted outline, then when I move my mouse away, it's actually deleted that breakpoint. So you can see it's been removed from the list up here. But it's still got a message queued up, which is why you can still see it. So you can hit play and things are now running again, and I can just inject away now and nothing's happening because although it's enabled, I don't have any breakpoints. So messages are flowing through, and if I go to the debug sidebar, yeah, you can see all those messages are flowing through as you would expect. Good. So that's what the Flow Debugger is, and largely that's the functionality we will have on version 1. But there's just a few tidying up tasks to do, which would be true of any component in Node-RED. So I'm not going to dwell, this isn't dwelling too much on the internal workings of the debugger. This is just kind of some of the bread and butter of work you need to do a nicely integrated component in Node-RED. So if we look at our issue list, the top on the list, as it happens, is keyboard shortcuts. So I've shown you a whole bunch of clicking around to do stuff, like enabling the Flow Debugger, stepping and all that sort of stuff. At the moment, there's no way to set keyboard shortcuts for any of those actions because they're not defined as actions in the Node-RED parlance. So that's where we're going to start. Now, I will say, let me just move him out of the way. So for a variety of reasons, I decided to write the Flow Debugger using TypeScript rather than vanilla JavaScript and Node.js. Partly as I decided it was a nice self-contained exercise in learning more about TypeScript and learning more about the pipeline of how to build a Node-RED component using TypeScript and all the stuff you need. And it's fine. It's quite nice. I'm glad I did it. Don't suddenly feel the urge to go rewrite everything else in TypeScript, but yeah. Now, that said, the TypeScript stuff is the runtime side. All of the code in the editor remains not TypeScript. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to start adding some keyboard shortcuts. Now, there's two parts to adding keyboard shortcuts. I think I've covered this in previous videos. So first we have to define actions. So these are named things that can be invoked within Node-RED. And you can actually see evidence of those. If in the editor you hit, Control-Shift-P, you get the action dialog. And basically this is a list of all of the named actions, and you can see the keyboard shortcuts listed next to them. So this is all of the actions built into, or that have been registered. Core means it's part of the core editor. So first we register an action, and then we can set some default keyboard shortcuts for them. So let's think, let's just think, I do need to restructure this code slightly, but right. Let's just think through what are the actions we want to register. And before I do, I'm just going to pull up just remind myself of the syntax. So what we do is red.actions.add. Bear with me, just to make things a bit more readable for you. Red.actions.add, the name of the action. So we are going to prefix them all as the Flow Debugger. And we want to, all the sidebar tabs have shortcuts to show their tab. So show debugger tab is going to invoke show, and we've already got a function called show. So let's just see this working. When I hit save on that file, in this window, it's running the TypeScript build, which rebuilds it, although this particular file isn't TypeScript. I then need to go and tell Node-RED to restart. Noxy Boy, have you played with Vue? Yeah, I've done a bit with Vue. I've played with a variety of web toolkits, and Vue was quite nice. I've purposefully, Node-RED, we've chosen not to base it on one of those frameworks as such. Whether that's a good thing or not. Just like to read. Oh, unexpected token dot. Okay. Did I typo somewhere? Yes. This needs to be inside the onAdd function. So now I'm going to cheat. So this is the npm script I've got running in this window, which is watching for changes. And whenever, there we go, dev. So whenever I change any of the Flow Debugger files, it runs the build task. And then, which does various things. What I'm going to just cheat and add on to the end of here is so in this window, I've got NodeMon watching for changes in the Node-RED source tree. So a quick little hack I did is just set this up so that whenever the Flow Debugger build finishes locally, it then touches a JavaScript file in the Node-RED source tree, which triggers the Node-RED build to restart, which is all a bit, it's all a bit hacky, but it works. It works when NodeMon behaves, although, so there we are, so it automatically restart. It just means I don't need to go and constantly retouch files and restart stuff. Okay, so what have we done in all of this? Well, we should now find is we've got the Flow Debugger show debugger tab. Now, interesting, we've got a core show Flow Debugger tab action already. Is that because oh yes, all right. So I had already added an action for the Flow Debugger tab, but it's under the wrong namespace. So let's go grab, let's pull them all back together. If that will do it. Yeah, here's where we're setting up all the sort of listeners for all the different events the Flow Debugger needs, and more stuff. So we're going to stick in here our actions. So we've got show debugger tab. And we're going to do we want an action to pause flows. For now, I'm just sort of no-opping these actions, just sort of brainstorming what are the actions we want: pause, resume, step flows. We want enable debugger, disable debugger. Cool. I mean, I think those are the obvious actions to have for now. So let's just implement some of these. Pause flows. Well, we've already got buttons that can be clicked to cause things to get paused. I believe, yeah, pause debugger is, yeah. So to pause flows, we've already got, oh yeah, thank you. Enable debugger, not enabled debugger. Pause flows, resume debugger exists, I'm pretty sure. Yep. Step flows, right. Do I have a function for that? I do, trick question, I do have a function for that. What did I call it? So we've got disable and enable. That's all good. Well, let's just put those in as I found them. Enable debugger, disable debugger. Where's my step function? Yeah, I need to do a bit of, not refactoring, just reorganizing some of this code. I've definitely got, right, let's go find step forward. Okay, so I don't have an explicit oh. Just, what am I thinking? I'm just trying to double check. Right. So this pause debugger function actually, and this is where it's slightly confused, because when you do an action in the, well, when in the Flow Debugger you click a button, it sends a command to the runtime to actually do the action, because do the work on the runtime. The runtime then sends back a status update. And actually, I'd forgotten the pause flow and resume flow functions I've just attached are actually, these are what get called when we get the notification back from the runtime that something has changed. So what we actually want to do for these is send command pause, I think. That's what I had, wasn't it? No, it's not send command, is it, at all? Post command. Yeah, post command, resume, pause, and step. That's what I want. So post command, pause. That'll be resume and that'll be step. Cool. And then I just want to double check likewise on this enable and disable debugger. Yeah, again, they are almost like side effects to the action, if that makes sense. And again, this is right for a bit of refactoring later, but for now, what I actually want to do is change the state of our toggle, the button in the UI, as if it'd been clicked, and then that will then trigger the work that we already do when you click that button. So this is enable, so we want to set that to true. And we set that one to false. Cool. So that's created up our Flow Debugger the actions. So let's see all that go. So TS-lint's running, and then the E fault because of NodeMon not being happy on Apple M1 chips sometimes. So we have to sometimes restart NodeMon ourselves. We reload, and let's go pull up Flow Debugger, Enable Debugger. So if I click that, yay, we've enabled. And if I say pause flows, yep, you can see flows paused. Good, good. If I do resume flows, they've resumed. You can see in the, maybe be able to see in the log down here. If I move it up a bit, you will. You can see the Flow Debugger is being logged when it's enabled. It's flows paused for a manual event. Flows resumed. Cool. Okay, for completeness, let's pause. Let's queue up a couple messages, and then do step flows. And yes, you can see a message passed from the inject node to the switch node. Good. Okay, so that's given the basic framework for keyboard shortcuts. If I bring up the keyboard shortcuts dialog, yeah, you can see step flows here is unassigned. Pause flows is there, but it's unassigned. So they are there now that a user could set keyboard shortcuts on them. The question is, do we want to get opinionated and set some keyboard shortcuts? So I always defer to, okay, what does what do Chrome DevTools do for all these things? So from the looks of that, they had oh no. Okay, so they have a keyboard shortcut that for me triggers 1Password. So already it's clashing. Yeah, what do we try and define some keyboard shortcuts for the Flow Debugger? I don't know. Maybe tempted to leave it for now. But at least by now having the actions, we are at least able to set some keyboard shortcuts. Now, yeah. Good. Yeah, I'll need to have a little think about what suitable default shortcuts would be. Nice. Right, at this point, couple of things I want to, before I forget about it, you may have seen when I deleted a message in the queue, I got a stack trace. So let's just reproduce that. Well, let's see. Is it as simple as clicking? Yeah. Yep. Silly typo. It's calling a function that doesn't exist. So we go to flowdebugger.ts because, yes, it's TypeScript. And somewhere in here, we've got send state when it should be send status. So we'll save that. Just give it all a moment to rebuild. That's rebuilt. Now let's see, has Node-RED. Yep, NodeMon's done its thing. So now we reload because it's restarted, everything's disabled and the queues are empty. So let's just pause the runtime, inject a few messages, delete, delete, delete. If I check the console, you can see debug messages, which we'll get rid of before we ship, but no errors. And in, yeah, you can see no stacks. So we've fixed that. Yeah, Nathaniel, yeah, it's often the function keys. And yes, I feel the need to do a bit of digging to see what's a suitable set. Because, of course, if we pick the same set as the standard debugger in the browser, then users might, developers who want to debug something in Node-RED might not appreciate the fact that we've overloaded them. So we kind of want them to be familiar whilst not being inconvenient. So, yeah. Well, any suggestions, do shout. Okay, let's just look through. Internationalization is something to be done. Shall we have a quick go to see if we can get that done now? Yeah, I don't think that's something. Two things to look at: supporting CSS themes and internationalization. So getting all the English text out of the UI into a catalog so it could get translated. CSS themes means right now, so the Flow Debugger has a bunch of CSS in it. For the majority of it, it's just positional stuff, which is kind of out of scope for the custom themes. So that's fine. However, there are certain things we want to be able to do. Oops, don't edit undo. For example, when we have some messages, if we set a breakpoint, is it? There. So if you look carefully up in the sidebar where the switch breakpoint is listed, when I hover over that breakpoint, you can see we set the background of, we highlight the breakpoint in the list. It might be clearer if I add a few more. You can see it highlights the one in the list that I'm hovering on. And it does the reverse. When I hover on a breakpoint, it highlights, it gives it a dotted orange border. So two things here. The color that it highlights the hovered item in the list, and the color of the dashed border we give the breakpoint annotation. So those are two things that currently are hard-coded in the Flow Debugger. So this is the CSS for the editable list, a list item highlight, give it the background E6, 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 and somewhere else in here, there are a number of colors in here for various states of it. And I think that's triggered, which we don't actually do anymore. Highlight, yeah. So that's this FF7FOE. That's the standard orange we use when you select stuff in the editor. Now that's fine. So it looks right in the default Node-RED theme, but if you install a custom theme may have changed these colors. But the way our theming works is there's no easy way for the Flow Debugger to pick up those changed colors based on how we currently generate the themes. So the reason this is something to get done for 2.0 is I think there are going to be some slight tweaks to how we do the CSS in the editor that will make components able to pick up colors from the theme. Which we can do using CSS variables, something I'd avoided previously because Internet Explorer doesn't support. But yeah, I'm not going to lose too much sleep if the Flow Debugger doesn't work on Internet Explorer, to be frank. Yeah. So yeah, so that's what I mean about supporting CSS themes. And yeah, that's what I mean there. So I do try very hard for the majority of this for it to we need to make sure we pick up Node-RED specified colors from the theme. What I don't yet have a good sense on is, for example, this blue, or the various shades of blue we use to mark the breakpoint. Those aren't colors coming from the core of Node-RED. Those are colors the Flow Debugger I've picked out, and they are in the Flow Debugger source. So there is a question about if someone's running with a dark theme, how should it be? How can someone create a custom theme that could also customize the colors of the Flow Debugger? I don't have a good answer for that yet. Yeah. I would. I keep looking at the top of my screen, and if anyone's wondering, Nat Handley sent me a test flow the other day, which I keep meaning to go back to. So I just stuck it on a tab with his name to remind me to go back to it, although I haven't yet. So that's why his name is why I have a tab with his name. I would just point out some of the other little tweaks I've made for 2.0 to help with this. Our default notification toast I've actually made slightly narrower. So we occasionally would get complaints that when you hit deploy, this successfully deployed message would overlap the tab bar. Now it's overlapping the tab bar there because we're paused. So if I hit play and then hit it. So what we've actually done is made the default notification slightly narrower so it doesn't overlap the tabs. So it gets less, it doesn't get in the way, which is more important for when you're paused, because we leave this notification up permanently to give you ready access to the pause and step buttons, because it might be, at this point you want to go over to debug to examine messages in debug and then step through from this view. So yeah, we've made that change. Another subtle change is when you open up a subflow template, we now open it and put the tab next to the one you were on rather than at the end of the tab list. Just to, it proved to be a pain when you've got lots of tabs like I happen to at the moment. So yeah, again, that change will actually be in 1.3.5. So that's not just 2.0. So at least I think I put that change into 1.3.5. You'll find out. 1.3.5 will ship tomorrow. So sorry, Cold Tortoise. Did you consider a Chrome or Firefox extension for the debug UI? No. No, I didn't consider trying to do a browser extension. Didn't really want to get into building browser-specific extensions when we can do something that's integrated directly into the Node-RED UI and just fits in more with Node-RED. So there may be clever, interesting things that could be done with a browser extension, but that's not something I'd really put much thought into considering. Anyway, enough demoing and showing. Let's go and fix another thing. So it's either the CSS stuff or it's the message catalog. I've done quite a bit of CSS stuff with themes. What I'm going to actually have a go at is the message catalog stuff. So how does that work? Well, the way that works is, and it's been ages since I've done this, so it may or may not go right. First thing we do is we create a new folder. What do we do? We just remind ourselves. Yeah. We create a folder. Bear with me. I'm because of the TypeScript, because we've got this build step, I just need to, there's an extra bit that I need to take into account, which I don't want to get too distracted by. We create a locales folder, and under that enus. Is this right? Sorry, Noxy Boy. Has it ever been suggested to use tabs like an idea and have the flows listed left sidebar in a tree and allow nested flows? So yeah, there's lots of discussion around having what are the ways to organize the flows. There are people who are very passionate for having a vertical tab bar rather than the horizontal one, particularly when you get lots of flows. Some of the mitigation is, we do have a one-click list of your flows which you can search. We do have a tree view of all your flows over here, which can be searched and navigated. So there is certainly a suggestion of having a tab bar over on the left-hand side, but quite how that coexists with the palette, I don't know. Haven't had a moment of inspiration for how that would work that feels like it would work. It's easy to say, just stick it over there, but it's not that easy. There is also, a bit off topic, but one of the reasons I was keen to create this tree view in the info sidebar to give you this list of everything is before we had that, there was no other list of all your flows of tabs other than the tab bar. But now we have this. There is a suggestion of we could make these tabs closable. So just like a subflow tab can be closed, actually being able to close tabs that you're not working on, because you've got, at the very least, you've got the outline, and if we had a different UI, it might work better. But yeah, having tabs and having a toggle on the side as to whether it's visible or not means you could potentially hide from the tab bar, not from the outline, but hide flows that you're not working on and just have open the ones you're working on. That's a possibility, but we will see. Anyway, what we're quickly going to do is I'm going to go remind myself how we do locales, because I can never quite remember how you... I spend so much time in the core where the rules are very slightly different for reasons. So let's go look at the Twitter node. So in the Twitter node, we have a locales directory, enus, and then it's the name of the node file.json. That's the bit I couldn't remember. So we've got flowdebugger.html. So we're going to create flowdebugger.json. And we're just going to say, hi there. Now this is where I've got to do a little bit of special stuff in my TypeScript setup. I think. Copy static assets. So at the moment this is a custom code. So the TypeScript will take on my TypeScript and generate the JavaScript. I've got a separate script then copies the non my brain is failing me, non-TypeScript assets. So for example, the HTML file gets copied over. What we also need to copy over is locales. And This is where I long for copy. Do we have a copy recursive yet in the core npm mod, the core FS library? We don't, do we? Okay, so now we're getting to a bit of yak shaving to do this feature. What we need to do is modify this. At the moment, this script only knows how to copy discrete files. I need to be able to now copy over a folder of content. And I realise now this is one of the reasons I didn't tackle the localization sooner. But that's okay. What we're going to do is so what this code is currently doing is it loops over this array of the assets we want to copy. And at the moment, it was reading it in and then minifying it regardless. So let me just show you what that looks like. Where does it end up? Dist flowdebugger.html. So all my big verbose HTML, CSS, it all gets minified down to be as small as possible, and it's actually a pretty huge saving we get. Something I'm actually tempted to apply to some of the core Node-RED nodes, that actually there's a lot of white space we could be stripping out to reduce the size of the network transfer for the core stuff. But I haven't broached that with my fellow maintainers yet, because it's another build step to add between editing code and running code, which doesn't always go down well. But yeah, so we've just had a quick test that if it's an HTML file, we'll do that minification using minify. Else, we will just assume it's a directory. Is there really no copy recursive? I know they've finally got mkdir recursive, and they've got rmdir recursive, but I just want to copy a directory. Unfortunately, pretty sure copy file. Yeah, okay. So for the sake of not boring you all, let's go look at FS Extra, which is we actually use FS Extra in the core of Node-RED, and it just provides the lovely copy. Yeah. So I was trying to avoid adding a dependency on this, but let's just do that. So npm install dev. Oh, I realize you can't see it, but I'm just running the npm install. Let's run. So now FS Extra is on my dependency list. So we can just require FS Extra, and it's a drop-in replacement for the FS module, which is nice. Then what we're going to do is create the destination directory, because from the docs we briefly had. So we're just going to use copy. If source is a directory, it will copy everything inside of the directory, not the entire directory itself. Well, that's what we want. Good. Yeah. And des should be the, yeah. So, oh, losing focus. Right. So we make the destination directory. We then do an await of fs copy the source asset over to the destination. Oh, and that should now run. So let's, there is f, it's not native. So yeah, so f, exactly what I'm using here. Noxy, it just, whilst the core fs module has become much more useful now, it has, now it has promise support available, built in, which is why I was relying on FS Extra a lot before. Yeah, there's just a couple, it still has a couple utilities in it which are still just that bit more useful than the alternatives. No, npm run, yeah, npm run dev. Oh, that all failed. Where did that fail? Mongo, what? Oh, I've gone into the wrong source. Right, don't want the Flow library. What do we want? We want Node-RED debugger. And is it run dev? No. You may not have noticed I just accidentally killed my terminal window, which, yeah, npm run dev. Is this... What's going on? Oh, npm install nodemon. Good. Right, that's running. And let's just see if the copy static. Okay, so copy static assets has worked. Let's just kill that script and go look in our dist folder. You can see there's a locales directory. Oops. Which has got our JSON. Cool. So all that work, we're now going to be copying the message catalog into the right place so it will get found when Node-RED loads. Oh, where did that crash? Ooh, file already exists. Ooh, let's bring it back into view. Okay, so it works the first time, it doesn't run the second time because it already exists. And this is where we can use mukdir recursive true, which stops mukdir complaining if you're asking it to make something that's already there. Let's see. Hopefully the fs copy will still run. Cool, that worked. Right. So for all that work, we've got the flow debugger.json, and you remember I just added hi and there. Because now the challenge is just to try and figure out what's the right way to actually get hold of that message. So just using the terminal down here. So we use red._, which is our message catalog lookup function. And then I bet if I do flow debugger : hi, oh, we get hi back, which isn't what I wanted. Now this might be because I got the name wrong. Is it Node-RED debugger hi? No. Okay. Let's look in here. Oh, I need to make that smaller so I can actually see it. Okay, so it's not loaded a message catalog for that, for the Flow Debugger plugin. Okay. What have I done wrong then? What is wrong? FlowDebugger.json, that name matches our HTML, our node. So it should be finding that, and it should be, yeah, like I said, I've not played with the message catalog stuff for ages, so I might work.
I don't know that one.
Oh, quiet, Alexa. Okay, how do we debug this? What's the quick and easy way to debug this? Tell you what, have I got? Yes, I've got the RBE node. Why am I interested in the RBE node? Oh no, bad example. Why is it not loading the message catalog? Let's go quickly debug this. When we are loading, just trying to find where we do the discovery of locales. Yeah, it's here. So let's just make sure this is getting called. Load node locale for node.module. See what we're actually trying to load. Yeah, let's just see what does that. So lots of undefines. Okay, that didn't work so well. Oh, because I mistyped it, so that's be module. Oh, an e-fault. Oh, bloody no one. It always goes slow when you're watching it. Okay, so you can see it's loaded up lots of core nodes, plugins, Node-RED. Okay, so it is loading up the Node-RED debugger there, which is good. Let's add a bit of conditional debug now. So if node.module is Node-RED debugger, console.log. Okay, so that's the path to the locales. Cannot access base file before initialization because I've put that in the wrong place. Let's put it there. So here you can see the file it's trying to load, or at least the directory it's trying to load, which is the Node-RED module dist locales. So that does exist, I believe. So here we should console.log found node namespace node.id. This might be over. There we go. Found node. Right. Node-RED debugger / Flow Debugger. If that's. Yeah. And this is what I forgot. It has to be fully qualified, which is a bit of a pain because it makes it far more verbose. And there we have it. So by getting the catalog, yeah, all that faffing was getting the right catalog ID, and I forgot that it's not just the module name, it's also the set name. But Node-RED debugger / Flow Debugger : hi returns there. Cool. So that is how we can look up translations for the Node-RED Flow Debugger. Let's revert all these changes in. And I'm pretty sure the docs do cover this. I'm just being lazy and not gone and read the docs. Honest. I mean, I wrote the docs, but it's been a while. Right, it's getting on a bit, so let's go and so Flow Debugger. Now let's just do a scan through. Where do we have text? I can think of a few places. I'm just trying to be a little systematic. Right, here's one, breakpoints. So what do? We want label.breakpoints. And then we go over to our Flow Debugger file, and we have, say we want a section called label, and under that we're going to have breakpoints, which is the word breakpoints. And I'll just copy that because we're going to want it in a minute. I'm sure there's going to be. What's really good is working with the guys at Hitachi is because they do the Japanese translations, they're really good at spotting all the translations I completely failed to spot. Because I guess it's far more obvious when you're translating into Japanese when a bit of English suddenly appears in the UI that you weren't expecting. Messages. Okay, so that's a couple obvious bits of text. Well, let's go have a look in the UI. So this, where it says disabled and enabled, those messages are actually, they're already pulled out of the core Node-RED message catalog because they're common phrases. So we don't need to retranslate that. So we have breakpoints. When I set a breakpoint, it says output and 1. So that word output and the word input, they all need translating. Okay. Of course, I've got to go find them, but I know roughly where they are. He says, where are they? They are part of create annotation, all the way down here. And somewhere down here, the overlay. Oh, I've run out of code. No. Oh, sorry, no. Overlays are on the nodes themselves. What we want is add item on the breakpoint list. Here we are. So this is where we build up the UI of the list of breakpoints. And here we are, list label. Oh, we're getting close. There we are. Input, output. we want input, output, and the number afterwards. I think I got all that right. Oh. There you are. NodeMon just crash, crash, crash when you least want it. When you're trying to do things in a hurry. Right, refresh. Breakpoints. Let's just make sure. Yep, still says the word input. Still says the word output. So the real the real test is okay. So we modify the message catalog. We just need to kick off a rebuild and a restart. Dun, 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 dun. That restart. Reload. We enable, so there you can see the modified messages are being used. So that's good. Just check. Yeah. Output. Input. Nice. That's working. Let's see. What else have we got? We've got. Ooh. Ooh. We have a bug. I'm injecting to this breakpoint and it's not stopping. Because this is a subflow module node. And that is a restriction as it stands that we can't debug subflow module nodes. There we are. So, okay. Right. Another bit of text. Flows paused up here. We need to go find that text. Just get rid of the AAs and BBs. Flows. Do we want a capital P? I don't think we do. No, we don't. Flows paused. Good. And there's the text. So flows paused. Nice. That's got all the just enable it. Just check it doesn't balk. If I pause, flows paused. Yep. Okay, well that's working. So that's kind of primed now, ready for translation. I haven't gone through and done the runtime messages, but to be frank, it's far more interesting translating the UI than it is the runtime. Although I think the principle should be exactly the same. I think we actually share the message catalog. Let's just validate. Am I right in that? How have I got this? Here we are. So just out of interest, I'm going to change this. I think I should be able to do red dot underscore. Yeah, I should be able to do exactly the same as I did in the runtime. Yeah. except it's at this point for reasons because it's TypeScript, well, not just the way the code's structured. So I think, yeah, the nodes share the message catalog between the editor and the runtime. So if I reload this, enable it, and pause the runtime, go look at the log, yeah, Flow's paused. So that's worked. So we've picked up the translation there. Might just stick a colon in with the reason. Yeah. So if we look where else, we've got flows resumed. Oh, yep, another NodeMon crash. Thank you, NodeMon. Where else do we do this.log? Log step. We've got enabled, disabled, and step. Yeah, let's just enabled, disabled, step. No, tell you what, I'm not going to enable the runtime for translations at this point. Let's just undo all that. Just because I don't want to create busy work basically for if there's no need to translate the runtime. Yeah, it's 5 minutes work to extract the strings if need be, but it feels like it's busy work just for the sake of doing work. All right, so that's translations done. Nice. So the final one was around CSS variable, theming. Now it's 9:20. I'm not going to get into this here and now, but the basic approach will be to use CSS Custom Properties. So what you can do with CSS, as long as you don't mind about Internet Explorer anymore, which we don't, is you can define constants in your CSS, which you can then reference in your style sheets. So it's just variable substitution, but actually at the top level of CSS rather than using something like less or one of the CSS compilers. So essentially what that means is the work to be done here will be in the CSS of the core. We have our colors file, and essentially what we will end up doing is generating CSS variables for everything in here, so that not only when you write CSS can you use, so these dollar variables are because we use Sass, which is a CSS compiler, which will substitute when it's a build that will take all of these variables and their value and will do all the substitution in these files to generate the CSS that's then what is shipped to the browser or what is in the built bundle that we publish to NPM. But things outside of Node-RED can't use these dollar variables. That's purely within the realm of the Node-RED build. What we could do is actually generate for all of these things, generate variables that can be used in CSS directly. I just need to think through what this means for theme authors. because the way you currently generate themes is theme authors take a copy of just this file, this colors.scss, and insert their custom colors throughout, and any of the other custom styling they want in this file, and they then run a script we provide, build custom theme, that takes those colors, takes our colors, lays them over the top of each other so we get just the custom color themes. It then generates the entire CSS for Node-RED. It then strips out anything that isn't about color. So the custom theme ends up just being a redefinition of all the custom colors in the style sheets. Anyway, there's a bunch of work to do to make that support CSS variables so that they will get generated in. Well, I need to work out how it works that can a theme redefine variables. I haven't played with them before, so I hope they can. If they can't, then we'll have to think again about how all of this is going to work. But anyway, that's where we're at. May as well, for completeness sake, let's just get this work committed and pushed. So if anyone does want to play along at home, you can grab this code. So what have we done? We have we've added FS Extra as a dependency. I'm going to revert this change, which is the one that touched the Node-RED source code, to force a rebuild. I'm not going to revert it because I want it locally, but I'm not going to commit it. We've updated copy static assets to know how to copy locale files. We've added a locale file. We have, and then we've gone through and set the, ignore that change, but, we've done two things. We've added the actions. Okay, I'm going to do this properly. So I'm going to not stage the actions. So I'm just staging the internationalization changes. Okay, so add I18 catalog. I do try and keep the commits. Yeah, it'd be tempting just to throw all those changes into one commit and just say, yeah, tonight's live stream work. But I do try and keep the commit history somewhat clean. So here we have all the keyboard actions. Add actions for Flow Debugger. And I still haven't figured out why it takes so long for git commit to run for me. Well, I mean, I know what it is. It's the GPG signing of them. Why it takes as long as it does, I don't know. And then this was fix error when deleting queued message. Right. That's all good. Push that. So yeah, if anyone wants to play, please do play. Otherwise, in the big scheme of things, 1.3.5 will get done tomorrow. We will hopefully have the first beta for 2.0 later this week, which will be good. And that's why I want to do the Flow Debugger, so we'll have a beta of the Flow Debugger available as well. Yeah, that's my plan for this week. So, thanks for joining. If you're on YouTube, please do like, subscribe. We're doing this every Monday. Hopeful soon we might do some more Node-RED tutorial type material. We'll see. But if there's things in particular you'd like to see, do drop a comment. Give us a ping on Twitter or on Slack. Here to help you guys do what you guys want to do with Node-RED. So with that, I am going to sign off, say goodnight, have a good week, have a good rest of your day wherever you are in the world. And as I try and find the button to click to say goodnight, I say goodnight.